The Spirit in the Body by Robert Crosbie. Letter 16. You speak of peace and tranquility. Note that it as well as its opposite comes in cycles. There is no stationary condition in this world of constant change, through the innumerable causes constantly set in motion by the different agencies in evolutionary operation. Yes, there is undoubtedly something doing. The above statement, if true, would suggest it, even if you did not know it yourself. Of course, changes do not invariably mean trouble. Knowledge bridges over many things that would otherwise mean nothing but trouble. About your little dream of me, I think of you a great deal, and that of itself would bring the real selves together where there is such an evident tie as in this case. One might make such an excursion and not be conscious of it, or rather, he might not have a brain recollection of it, as the brain was not there. It might be none the less real, as you can readily understand. Such things must naturally occur, for we are greater than our bodies can at this time express, and I mean by we, every soul. We all have powers and knowledge that the brain does not function in. Our work is to coordinate, so that the higher knowledge may be made manifest in the flesh. I am glad that you had the experience, especially as the results were good. In regard to our et al., it is safe to say that if a man is satisfied with what he is getting out of life, and if there is nothing that he wants, then there is nothing else desirable. To him anything outside of that which gratifies is adventitious, not worthy of consideration. In such case, there is nothing that can be done. Having dropped some seed, the character of the soil may be determined. The duty of the sower is to sow, the seed will test the soil. So, there was war in heaven for the space of 2 hours. I can understand it. Fortunately it is not a case for argumentation. The remark by in regard to Mr. Judge was utterly beyond his knowledge and probably a parrot-like repeating of what he had heard, as is the case of those who take their theosophy from Mrs. Besat, or from other than the true teachers. Sometime you may say to for me, that I was very, very frequently with Mr. Judge for 10 years, entertained him and was entertained by him, and that I know the statement to be an ignorant and malicious libel, for which, however, I do not blame him. Only, a theosophist ought to know better than to make statements on hearsay. Ask him if he ever heard of never listening to an evil thing said of another without protest, and abstaining from condemning others. He might say to quack, which you would naturally acknowledge, then, questions on the part of both would be considered on their merits, as becomes theosophists. Mr. Judge was wise enough to know that when people place their attention in the direction of food, form, or ceremonies, they are almost certain to end in ritualism and the loss of the real issue, as has happened in too many cases. The argumentative attitude is of little value in theosophy. It amounts to each endeavoring to uphold his own position. With this attitude, any kind of a statement calculated to undermine the opponent's position is generally considered proper, and is used regardless of the truth involved. A good thing in regard to control of speech is from the laws of more. In occultism, speech is regarded as an act, and the most difficult of all acts to control. To control speech, regular and persistent efforts are required. The rule for speech is given as, let him say what is true. Let him say what is useful. Let him say what is pleasant. Let him utter no disagreeable truth. Let him utter no agreeable falsehood. In the same line is Judge's admonition, let us use with care those living messengers called words. These are good things to bear in mind at all times, without making so much of them as to neglect other things quite as important. If aspiration is for all, and not for self alone, it reaches up to the universal finally. If for self, some degree of illumination results, but only in degree. The stream of effort cannot rise above its source. As to the we, there is but one we, or perceiver, who perceives on any plane through the sheaths evolved by him on each plane. His perceptions on any plane will depend on the quality of the sheath or vehicle. Atma, spirit, or consciousness alone, is what remains after the subtraction of the sheaths. It is the only witness, a synthesizing unity. On this plane, and this means during waking consciousness or its dream effects, the perceiver knows only what it knows on this plane, generally speaking, and through the ignorance of the real, involves itself in the cause and effect of physical nature, identifying itself with body and sensations, and looking at other human beings in the same light. This is a wrong attitude of mind. The we, at this end, is the identification of the perceiver with this plane's perceptions, a misconception of the perceiver, a dream, a play, in which the perceiver is so involved as to have lost sight and memory of his real life. The mind is both carrier and translator of both lower and higher self. The attitude determines the quality and kind of action, for one will act according to the attitude of mind firmly held. The great and incalculable value of acting for and as the supreme is that there is nothing higher in the way of attitude, and this idea must by its very nature bring about the best results. What moves the mind this way or that is usually desire for the attractions of matter, and self-interest in them. These then move and control the mind through the brain. We, the perceiver, does not perceive anything but the ideas which the senses and organs present. He is not wholly awake on this plane. Sometimes he gets partly wakened, but drops off to sleep again, lulled by the sounds and memories of his dream. Sometimes bad dreams awake him, sometimes he is awakened by the voices of those who are awake. The real and the unreal, the fleeting and the everlasting are terms which will be more fully understood if looked at from the point of view of the perceiver. This is the attitude of mind we should hold. The appearances you speak of will wear off in time and you will get beyond that place where these things appear, if attention is not paid to them. He who would hear the voice of Ada, the soundless sound and comprehend it, he has to learn the nature of Dara, perfect concentration upon one interior object, by having become indifferent to other objects of perception. These appearances are objects of perception.